The alarm screamed through every corridor of the eternal horizon. Captain Han Doyen ran toward the bridge, his heart pounding in his chest. Something had gone terribly wrong with their jump through space. The ship shook violently as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel, throwing crew members against the walls. "Report," Han Doyen shouted as he reached his command chair. Lee Suji looked up from her navigation console, her face pale with fear. "Captain, I made an error in the calculations. We're not in human space anymore. I don't recognize any of these star patterns." Before Han Doyen could respond, the ship's sensors began beeping frantically. Lieutenant Park Ji-won checked her security screens and her eyes went wide. "Sir, we have 12 massive ships approaching. They're 10 times our size." Han Doyen felt his stomach drop. His ship carried 300 souls, families who had left Earth to start a new colony on a distant world. Now they were lost, surrounded by unknown vessels in unfamiliar space. He had fought in the Mars conflict years ago, but this was different. These weren't human ships. The alien vessels moved with impossible grace, their hulls made of something that looked like crystal and light. They surrounded the eternal horizon in a perfect sphere formation, cutting off any escape route. And Doyen had no choice. He ordered his crew to power down weapons and prepare for contact. Dr. Kang Minho arrived on the bridge, adjusting his glasses nervously. "Captain, are we really seeing alien ships? After all these years of searching, we find them like this?" "Not the way I hoped," Han Doyen replied grimly. A beam of blue light touched the eternal horizon's hull. The ship's computer tried to translate the incoming message, but the sounds made no sense. Then suddenly, words appeared on every screen in the ship, written in perfect English. "Unknown vessel. You have entered the territory of the Velkran Dominion. Prepare for boarding and inspection. Resistance will be met with containment." Han Doyen looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but also trust. They believed he would protect them. He touched the communication panel. "This is Captain Han Doyen of the human ship Eternal Horizon. We mean no harm. We are lost and request assistance." There was no reply. Instead, a section of the hull simply opened. No cutting, no force, just a doorway appearing where solid metal had been moments before. 6 tall figures stepped through and the crew gasped. The Velkrans stood nearly 3 meters tall. Their bodies seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. They had no mouths that anyone could see, no eyes in the human sense. Instead, patterns of light moved across their surfaces, constantly shifting and changing. When they moved, they made no sound at all. Park Ji-won's hand moved toward her sidearm, but Han Do-yoon shook his head sharply. She nodded and kept her hands visible, though her body stayed tense and ready. The lead Velkran's surface brightened, and words appeared on the nearest screen again. "We are Velkran. You are unknown. We will examine your technology and biology. You will comply. We will cooperate," Han Do-yoon said carefully. "But I must ensure the safety of my crew." The Velkran tilted its head in a gesture that seemed almost curious. More words appeared. "Your concern is noted. The Velkran Dominion does not harm without purpose. You will be evaluated. Your place in our hierarchy will be determined." Over the next 3 hours, the Velkrans moved through the ship. They touched equipment and it simply stopped working, as if they could control technology with thought alone. They passed their crystalline hands over crew members, studying them. Several people fainted when the aliens came near, overwhelmed by something they couldn't explain. Dr. Kang Minho followed the Velkrans, taking notes frantically. "Captain, I think they communicate through light and possibly telepathy. Every time one of them brightens, the others respond. It's like they're having a conversation we can't hear." The Velkrans gathered all visible human technology into a central cargo bay. Weapons, tools, computers, everything. They seemed particularly interested in the ship's reactor and navigation systems. Park Ji-won watched them take the security team's rifles and pistols, her jaw clenched tight. "Sir," she whispered to Han Doyen, "they're taking everything. We'll be defenseless, we already are." Han Doyen replied quietly, "Look at their ships. If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead. We need to learn about them, find an advantage." As the day wore on, the crew learned pieces of information. The Velkran Dominion had ruled this region of space for 10,000 years. They controlled hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic to human eyes. They had achieved peace through absolute superiority. The lead Velkran addressed Han Do-yoon one final time before leaving. "You will accompany us to Velkros Prime for processing. Your species will be classified. Most likely you will serve in the lower hierarchies. You are primitive but not without use. Han Doyen felt anger rise in his chest, but he forced it down. And if we refuse? The Velcran's surface flickered in a pattern that might have been amusement. Refusal is not a concept we recognize from species at your level. You will come because you have no other choice. This is not cruelty. This is simply the order of things. The Velcrans left as silently as they had come. The doorway in the hall sealed itself perfectly, leaving no trace. Moments later, the human ship lurched as tractor beams locked onto it. The eternal horizon began moving, pulled along by the alien fleet toward an unknown destination. Han Doyun sat in his command chair and looked at his crew. Lee Suji was crying quietly at her station. Dr. Kang Minho was already analyzing everything they'd learned. Park Ji-won stood at attention, her face hard and determined. "Listen to me, all of you," Han Doyen said, his voice carrying through the bridge. "We're not dead. That means we have a chance. We're going to this Velcros Prime, and we're going to learn everything we can about these Velcrans. We're going to find their weaknesses, their blind spots, and we're going to survive this." "How, sir?" Lee Suji asked, her voice breaking. "You saw them. They're like gods compared to us." Han Doyen stood up and walked to the main viewport. Outside, the crystalline alien ships glowed against the darkness of space, beautiful and terrifying. "We're human," he said simply. "We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and the void of space itself. We'll survive this too. We just need to be smart, patient, and ready for our moment." Park Ji-won stepped forward. "What kind of moment, Captain?" Han Doyen turned to face her, and for a moment a small smile crossed his face. "I don't know yet, Lieutenant. But I promise you, when it comes, we'll recognize it." The Eternal Horizon continued its journey into the unknown, carrying 300 humans toward the heart of an empire that had never encountered their kind. Behind them, human space grew more distant with every passing hour. Ahead lay Velcros Prime and a future no one could predict. In her quarters, Park Ji-won checked her belongings. The Velcrans had been thorough, but not perfect. Hidden in a shielded compartment she'd built years ago, sealed against sensors, was her service pistol. She had managed to keep it concealed during the inspection. She didn't know why she felt it was important to hide it. The weapon seemed useless against beings who could open holes in starship hulls with a thought. But something in her gut told her to keep it secret. Something told her that maybe, just maybe, these seemingly invincible aliens had never encountered something as simple and brutal as a human gun. She sealed the compartment and lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. The pistol was there, waiting in the darkness, a small piece of human history traveling into an uncertain future. The journey to Velcros Prime took 6 days. During that time, the humans could only watch through their viewports as strange worlds passed by. Each planet looked more advanced than anything they had seen before. Cities of light covered entire continents. Ships moved between worlds without visible engines. The scale of the Velcran dominion was overwhelming. When they finally arrived at the capital world, Han Doyen understood just how small humanity truly was in this corner of the galaxy. Velcros Prime was a world of impossible beauty. Towers of crystal reached into the clouds, connected by bridges of solid light. The sky itself seemed to shimmer with colors that had no names in human language. The Eternal Horizon was guided to a landing platform the size of a small city. As the crew prepared to disembark, Ambassador Cho Yuna joined Han Doyen at the airlock. She had spent the entire journey studying everything they knew about the Velcrans, preparing for negotiations. "Captain, I need to try to establish diplomatic relations," she said. "We can't just accept whatever classification they give us." Han Doyen nodded. "I know, Ambassador, but be careful. These beings don't think like we do. They've been in power so long they can't imagine being challenged." They were escorted from the ship by a new group of Velcrans, these ones marked with complex patterns of light that seemed to indicate rank. The humans were brought to a massive facility that reminded them of a luxury hotel combined with a prison. The rooms were comfortable, even beautiful, but there were no locks on the inside of the doors. They were guests who could not leave. Commandant Thelvoros was the Velcran in charge of their processing. Unlike the others, this one seemed genuinely curious about humans rather than dismissive. Its light patterns were slower, more deliberate, as if it was carefully choosing its words. "You are an interesting puzzle." The words appeared on a translation device they'd been given. "Your biology is unusual. Your technology is primitive but functional. Your social structures are chaotic yet stable. You will require extensive study. Cho Yuna stepped forward, speaking slowly and clearly. Commandant, we are not animals to be studied. We are a spacefaring civilization with rights and dignity. We request formal diplomatic recognition. Thelvoros's surface flickered in that pattern that might have been amusement. Dignity is earned through achievement. Rights are granted based on capability. You have neither in sufficient measure. However, your request is noted. Over the following weeks, the humans learned more about the empire that now held them. Dr. Kang Minho spent hours in their facility's library, which could display information directly into the air as three-dimensional images. What he discovered both amazed and troubled him. The Velcran Dominion had achieved peace 50,000 years ago. They had evolved beyond physical conflict through a combination of telepathic abilities and technology that made violence obsolete. Disputes were settled through mental contests or arbitration by ancient artificial intelligences. The very concept of physical combat was considered barbaric, something that primitive species did before they evolved. Captain, you need to hear this, Kang Minho said one evening, gathering the senior crew in a private meeting. The Velcrans haven't fought a real war in millennia. Their military exists only to contain and control lesser species. They have no concept of kinetic weapons anymore. Park Ji-won leaned forward. What do you mean, no concept? I mean they abandoned guns, missiles, bombs, all of it, thousands of years ago. They use energy weapons now if they use weapons at all. Their shields and defenses are designed for energy attacks. They have no historical memory of ballistic weapons. It's like they've forgotten that throwing rocks can hurt. Han Doyen felt something stir in his mind. Are you saying they're vulnerable to physical projectiles? I'm saying they wouldn't even know how to defend against them. It would be like us facing a weapon we've never imagined. We wouldn't know it was dangerous until it hit us. Park Ji-won stood up suddenly and left the room without explanation. Han Doyen watched her go, confused, but continued the meeting. They discussed their situation late into the night, trying to find any advantage they could use. Meanwhile, Park Ji-won returned to her quarters in the facility. Her belongings had been brought from the ship and searched again, but her hidden compartment had survived. She carefully opened it and looked at the pistol inside. It was a standard military sidearm, nothing special by human standards. But here, in a civilization that had forgotten such weapons existed, it might be the most dangerous object in the entire empire. She didn't take it out. Not yet. But she memorized exactly where it was, how quickly she could reach it if needed. The next morning, Cho Yuna had her formal meeting with the Commandant. She presented humanity's case with all the skill and passion she possessed. She spoke of human achievements, of art and science, of the colonies they had built and the challenges they had overcome. Thelvoros listened to everything, its surface pulsing slowly. When she finished, the Commandant's response appeared on the translation device. Your species shows potential. However, potential is not achievement. The Velcran Dominion has evaluated thousands of species over its history. You fall into classification level 7. You will be assigned as auxiliary workers in our industrial sectors. It is not slavery. You will be fed, housed, and protected. In time, if you prove capable, your classification may improve. That's unacceptable, Cho Yuna said firmly. We are not laborers. We are explorers, scientists, artists. You are what we determine you to be. This is not negotiation. This is classification. Your ship and its crew will be dispersed to various facilities where you can be most useful. The process begins tomorrow. Cho Yuna returned to the others and reported the failure. Han Doyun saw the defeat in her eyes and felt his own frustration rising. They had traveled across space, survived first contact, and now they were being reduced to servants because these crystalline beings couldn't see past their own superiority. That night, Engineer Bae Hyunwoo approached Park Ji-won quietly in the common area. I know you kept something, he whispered. I saw you checking that compartment on the ship. I won't ask what it is, but I want you to know that I can shield it better if you need me to. My quarters have industrial equipment. I can build better hiding places. Park Ji-won studied him for a long moment. Hyunwoo was young, barely 25, but he was brilliant with technology. She made a decision. Come with me. In her quarters, she showed him the pistol. His eyes went wide. They don't know you have this? No, and they can't know. Not yet. Why not yet? Why not never? Park Ji-won picked up the weapon, feeling its familiar weight. Because Dr. Kang says they've forgotten what weapons like this can do. Because we might need an advantage someday. Because this is the only piece of human military technology they haven't taken from us. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. I'll build you the best hiding place I can. Something that can fool their sensors completely. Over the next week, as the crew prepared for dispersal to work facilities, Hyunwoo built a new concealment system. He used materials from their quarters, combining them in ways that created blind spots in Velcron scanning technology. The pistol, along with 3 spare magazines of ammunition, disappeared into a space that technically didn't exist according to any sensor. The day came when they were to be separated. Han Do-yeon stood before his crew one last time in the facility's main hall. 50 of them would go to a mining facility on a nearby moon. Another 100 would work in manufacturing centers. The rest would be scattered across the system in various roles. Remember who you are, Han Do-yeon told them. We are human. We adapt, we survive. We will find each other again. Lee Suji, who had barely spoken since the navigation error that brought them here, finally found her voice. Captain, I'm sorry. This is all my fault. Han Do-yeon walked over to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. No, Suji, you made a mistake, yes. But maybe it was the mistake we needed to make. We've met alien life. We've seen wonders beyond imagination. And we're still alive. That's what matters. The Velcrans arrived to escort them to transport ships. As the crew was divided and led away, Park Ji-won managed to take her enhanced concealment device with her, the pistol hidden inside. None of the Velcron scanners detected anything unusual. She was assigned to the mining facility with Captain Han Do-yeon, Dr. Kang Min-ho, Lee Suji, and 20 others. As their transport lifted off from Velcros Prime, she looked back at the beautiful, terrible city below. Somewhere in that city, Ambassador Cho Yuna was still trying to negotiate, still fighting with words and diplomacy. Somewhere, Engineer Bae Hyunwoo was being taken to a manufacturing center where his skills would be used to maintain Velcron machines. And in Park Ji-won's bag, hidden from all sensors and all eyes, a single human pistol waited in the darkness. A simple tool of violence from a species that had never forgotten how to fight. In a civilization that had evolved past physical conflict. It was an anachronism. But anachronisms, Park Ji-won thought, sometimes have a way of becoming relevant again. The transport ship accelerated toward the moon, carrying its human cargo toward an uncertain future, and toward the moment when everything would change. 3 months passed on the mining facility. The work was hard but not impossible. The humans extracted rare minerals from deep beneath the moon's surface, using tools that responded to thought more than touch. The Velcrons watched over them constantly, monitoring their efficiency and progress. Han Do-yeon tried to keep morale high, but it was difficult. They were prisoners with comfortable cells, servants with kind masters, but prisoners and servants nonetheless. The crew grew quieter each day, their spirits slowly wearing down under the weight of their situation. The Velcron overseer assigned to their section was named Kelmaris. Unlike Commandant Thelvoros, this one had no curiosity about humans. To Kelmaris, they were simply tools, less efficient than machines but more flexible. When the humans worked too slowly or made mistakes, Kelmaris would activate pain fields, devices that sent waves of agony through their nervous systems without leaving any physical damage. The Dominion is not cruel, Kelmaris's translations would say. Pain is merely a teaching tool. You will learn to work properly. Dr. Kang Min-ho studied their captors whenever he could, noting everything. They don't understand physical violence, he told Han Do-yeon during a brief rest period. When I accidentally cut my hand on some equipment yesterday, the Velcran supervisor actually recoiled. The sight of blood disturbed it. They've been evolved past physical bodies for so long, they've become uncomfortable with the reality of flesh. That's a weakness, Han Do-yeon said quietly. Maybe. But how do we exploit it? They have technology we can barely comprehend. Han Do-yeon had no answer. Lee Suji had taken the hardest path of all. She pushed herself relentlessly at every task, as if she could somehow make up for the navigation error that had brought them here. She slept little and ate less. The other crew members worried about her, but she refused all comfort. One day, during a particularly difficult extraction operation, Lee Suji made a small error. She miscalculated the stress load on a support beam. It didn't collapse, no one was hurt, but the work had to be redone. It was the kind of mistake that happened sometimes, the kind that every worker made occasionally. Kelmaris did not see it that way. The overseer's surface flared bright red, A color the humans had learned meant anger, unacceptable inefficiency. This unit requires correction. The pain field activated, but stronger than ever before. Lee Suji collapsed, screaming. Her body convulsed as artificial agony tore through every nerve. The other humans rushed toward her, but invisible barriers appeared, holding them back. "Stop," Han Do-yun shouted. "She's heard enough." Correction is not complete until learning occurs. Kelmaris's translation stated flatly. The pain continued. Lee Suji's screams grew weaker, not because the pain lessened, but because she no longer had the strength to scream. Something broke inside Han Do-yun. He had been patient for 3 months. He had been diplomatic, careful, obedient. He had swallowed his pride and his anger, all to keep his crew safe. But this was too much. This was torture, and he would not stand by and watch. He ran forward and physically shoved Kelmaris away from the control panel. The effect was immediate and shocking. Kelmaris stumbled backward, its crystalline form actually falling. The pain field cut off instantly. Lee Suji collapsed, breathing in ragged gasps. But more importantly, every Velcran in the facility stopped moving. Physical contact. Aggressive physical contact. It was something they had not experienced in thousands of years. Kelmaris's surface flashed through colors rapidly, and the humans realized with surprise that the Overseer was afraid. You struck me." The translation came through, the words appearing slowly as if Kelmaris couldn't quite process what had happened. "I pushed you," Han Do-yun said, his voice hard. "And I'll do it again if you hurt any of my people like that." Security Velcrans materialized from nowhere, 6 of them surrounding the humans. Energy restraints began forming in the air, preparing to lock around the workers. The situation was spiraling out of control. Han Do-yun realized he had just made things much worse. Park Ji-won saw everything happening. She had been working in a different section of the mine, but she had heard Lee Suji's screams. She had seen the captain physically push the Velcran. She had seen the security forces arriving, and in that moment she made a decision that would change everything. She ran back to her quarters in the facility, her heart pounding. The other humans were trying to calm the situation, trying to explain, trying to prevent violence. She had perhaps 30 seconds before the Velcrans restored order and began punishing everyone. Park Ji-won reached her concealment device and pulled out the pistol. She checked it quickly. 3 months hidden, but the weapon was still perfect. She loaded a magazine, chambered a round, and ran back toward the mining area. She arrived to see Han Do-yun on his knees, energy restraints forming around his wrists. The other humans were being forced back against the walls. Kelmaris stood over the captain, its surface still flashing with color, still radiating something that looked like fear and anger mixed together. Park Ji-won raised the pistol. She aimed at the ceiling, at a point far from any living being, and she squeezed the trigger. The sound of the gunshot in the enclosed space was like the end of the world. Every Velcran froze instantly. The energy restraints disappeared. Kelmaris's surface went completely dark, all color draining away. The security Velcrans turned toward Park Ji-won, but they didn't approach. They just stood there motionless as if they had become statues. Park Ji-won kept the pistol raised but didn't fire again. She could feel her hands shaking slightly, but she kept the weapon steady. The humans stared at her in shock and confusion. They had never seen their lieutenant like this, had never seen her weapon. For 10 long seconds, nothing moved. The only sound was the ringing echo of the gunshot slowly fading away. Then slowly, Kelmaris took a step backward. Then another. The Overseer, who had terrorized them for months, who had tortured Lee Suji without remorse, was retreating. The security Velcrans moved next, but not toward the humans. They moved toward the exits. Their surfaces had gone pale, their light patterns erratic and rapid. One of them stumbled, its graceful movements turned clumsy by something the humans had never seen in a Velcran before. Fear. Pure, primal fear. Within 2 minutes, every Velcran had evacuated the mining facility. The humans were left alone, standing in shocked silence, staring at Park Ji-won and the small weapon in her hand. Han Do-yun slowly stood up, rubbing his wrists where the energy restraints had been. "Lieutenant, what just happened?" Park Ji-won lowered the pistol, her hand still shaking. I don't know, sir. I fired over their heads. I didn't hurt anyone. But they just ran." Dr. Kang Minho approached slowly, his eyes fixed on the weapon. The sound, he said quietly. They've never heard anything like it. And the smell, gunpowder smoke, and the concept, a projectile weapon. Captain, I think we just introduced something into this civilization that they have no frame of reference for. Lee Suji sat up slowly, supported by other crew members. She looked at Park Ji-won with wide eyes. You saved me. I saved all of us, maybe, Park Ji-won replied. She looked at the pistol in her hand as if seeing it for the first time. I just don't know what happens next. What happened next started within minutes. The facility's communication systems erupted with activity. Lights flashed on panels throughout the mining complex. The humans could see Velcran ships arriving in orbit, more than had been there before. Han Doyen went to the main communication terminal. The translation system was still active, and he could see messages flooding through the Velcran network. He couldn't understand most of it, but certain words kept appearing over and over. Weapon, unknown, danger, human, threat. They're talking about us, he said. They're talking about what just happened here. Within an hour, more messages arrived. These were clearer, directed at the humans specifically. Commandant Thelvaros wanted to speak with them. The High Council was convening an emergency session. The entire Dominion was suddenly focused on this one small mining facility on a forgotten moon. Park Ji-won sat down, the pistol resting on her lap. She had fired one shot, a single warning shot that hadn't hurt anyone. But somehow that one shot had done what 3 months of diplomacy and submission could not do. It had made the Velcrans see humans as something other than primitive laborers. It had made them see humans as dangerous. Captain, Park Ji-won said softly, I think I just started something we can't stop. Han Doyen looked at his lieutenant, at the weapon, at his crew gathered around in the empty facility. Maybe, he said. Or maybe you just gave us the only chance we have. Outside through the facility's windows, they could see more Velcran ships arriving. The beautiful crystalline vessels that had seemed so majestic now surrounded the moon like a cage. The humans had wanted respect. They had wanted recognition. They had wanted to be seen as equals. Now they had something else entirely. They had fear. And in the vast empire of the Velcran Dominion, in a civilization that had forgotten physical violence, fear was a weapon more powerful than any gun could ever be. The news of what happened would spread across the empire at the speed of light, and with it would spread a single terrible question that the Velcrans had not needed to ask in thousands of years. What do we do when we're afraid? The news traveled through the Velcran Dominion faster than anyone expected. Within hours, every world in the empire knew that humans possessed an unknown weapon. Within days, the story had grown far beyond what actually happened. Some reports claimed the humans had killed Velcrans. Others said they had destroyed part of the facility. Fear has a way of making truth grow into legend. On Velcros Prime, the High Council gathered in emergency session for the first time in 800 years. The chamber was a vast space where light itself seemed to take solid form. Hundreds of Velcrans attended, their surfaces flickering with rapid communication. The debate was intense and frightening in its scope. In the mining facility, the humans waited. No Velcrans had returned since the shooting, but the ships remained in orbit. Food and supplies still arrived through automated systems. They were isolated but alive, prisoners who had frightened their captors. 3 days after the incident, Commandant Thelvaros finally made contact. The Velcran appeared on their communication screens, its surface showing more colors than usual, indicating complex emotions. Captain Han Doyen, you and your crew will be transported to Velcros Prime. The Council wishes to understand your weapon. We will cooperate, Han Doyen replied carefully. But I must ensure my people's safety. No harm will come to you. We seek knowledge, not revenge. But you must understand that your actions have created significant disruption in our civilization. When they arrived at the capital, the city seemed different. The beautiful towers and bridges of light were the same, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't existed before. Velcrans moved more quickly, their light patterns more erratic. The Empire was nervous. They were brought to a secure research facility where Dr. Kang Minho was immediately taken to meet with Velcran scientists. Park Ji-won went with him, carrying the pistol in a sealed container. Han Doyen, Lee Suji, and the others were kept in comfortable rooms waiting to learn their fate. In the research facility, Dr. Kang Minho stood before a gathering of the Dominion's greatest minds. Park Ji-won placed the container on a table, and when she opened it, the Velcran scientists actually stepped backward. The simple metal pistol sat there looking like a primitive artifact, which in a way it was. "This is the weapon," Kang Minho said. He had prepared carefully for this moment. "It's called a pistol. It uses a chemical reaction to propel a small metal projectile at high speed. The projectile can penetrate soft targets and cause physical damage." One of the Velcran scientists, its surface showing a pattern that might have been fascination mixed with horror, asked through the translator, "How ancient is this technology?" "In human terms, several hundred years old. But the principle goes back thousands of years. Guns are fundamental to human military history." "Military history," another Velcran repeated. "You have a history of physical warfare?" Kang Minho nodded. "Extensive history. We have fought wars on every continent of our homeworld. We've developed thousands of types of weapons, from simple clubs to nuclear missiles. Physical conflict is part of our species' development." The Velcran surfaces all flickered rapidly, their telepathic network clearly alive with communication. They were disturbed by this information in ways that Kang Minho was only beginning to understand. "Your energy shields," Kang Minho continued, choosing his words carefully. "They're designed to stop energy weapons, correct? Lasers, plasma-directed energy? Of course. No species in the Dominion has used projectile weapons in 50,000 years. Then your shields won't stop bullets. The physical projectile will pass right through as if the shield wasn't there." The room went completely silent. The implications were sinking in. The Velcran Dominion had built its defenses around energy-based threats. Their ships, their buildings, their personal protection. All of it was optimized for a type of warfare that humans had moved beyond centuries ago. Against kinetic weapons, they were essentially undefended. Thelvoros arrived at the research facility later that day. The commandant's surface was showing colors that Kang Minho had never seen before. "The council is divided," it said. "There are 3 positions being debated." "What positions?" Handoyan asked when he was brought to join the meeting. "The first faction wants to eliminate all humans immediately. They see you as an existential threat to the Dominion. The second faction wants to keep you contained and controlled, never allowing you access to weapons or materials that could be used to make weapons. The third faction wants to establish some form of peaceful coexistence." "Which faction do you support?" Handoyan asked. Thelvoros' surface dimmed slightly. "I am trying to understand. You are primitive in many ways, but you possess knowledge and capabilities we have forgotten. This makes you dangerous, but also potentially valuable." Over the next week, Park Ji-won gave a demonstration of the pistol's capabilities. At a secure testing facility far from the city, she fired at targets made of various materials. The Velcran observers watched as bullets tore through substances that could withstand energy weapons without damage. She showed them different types of ammunition, explained reload procedures, demonstrated accuracy at various ranges. The Velcrons were both amazed and terrified. Every shot made them flinch even when they knew it was coming. The sound alone seemed to cause them physical discomfort. The sight of physical destruction, of materials being shattered by kinetic force, was deeply disturbing to beings who had evolved past such violence. But Park Ji-won and Kang Minho weren't just demonstrating. They were also exaggerating. They implied that thousands of these weapons existed, hidden throughout human space. They suggested that human military technology included weapons far more powerful than pistols, weapons that could destroy ships and cities. None of it was a direct lie, but they let the Velcrans imagine capabilities that far exceeded what the 300 humans on the Eternal Horizon actually possessed. Meanwhile, across the Dominion, the social effects were growing. 3 subject species that had served the Velcrans for centuries began to question their masters. If humans could frighten the Velcrans, what did that say about Velcran invincibility? Small acts of resistance began appearing. Nothing major, but enough to worry the High Council. Trade routes were disrupted as Velcran merchants refused to travel near any system where humans might be present. Economic activity slowed. The stock markets on Velcros Prime, which hadn't seen significant volatility in generations, began experiencing daily fluctuations. Fear was spreading like a virus through a civilization that had forgotten what fear felt like. In the facility where the humans were kept, Ambassador Cho Yuna had finally found her opening. She made contact with Scholar Pelnara, one of the Velcrons advocating for peaceful coexistence. Pelnara was different from other Velcrons, more curious and less certain of her species' superiority. Your people have disrupted everything we thought we knew, Pelnara said during one of their meetings. For 10,000 years, we have been secure in our dominance. Now we discover that the foundation of our security was built on assumptions. We assumed no one would use physical weapons because we do not. We were wrong. We didn't come here to threaten you, Choyuna said. We came here by accident. All we want is to leave peacefully. It's not that simple anymore. War Marshal Krevthul is gaining support. He leads the elimination faction. He believes that as long as humans exist anywhere in this galaxy, the Dominion will never be secure again. That's madness. We're 300 people on one ship. But you represent more. You represent human space, wherever that is. You represent a species that understands violence in ways we've forgotten. Krevthul argues that you're like a disease, that even the knowledge that you exist will undermine our society. Choyuna realized the terrible irony of their situation. They had wanted respect and recognition. Now they had it, but in the worst possible way. They were respected as threats, recognized as dangers. The fear they inspired might be the thing that got them all killed. Lee Suji, who had been quietly recovering from her ordeal, finally spoke up during a crew meeting. This is my fault. If I hadn't made that navigation error, we wouldn't be here. Stop, Han Doyun said firmly. We're past that now. Yes, your error brought us here. But Lieutenant Park's action with the pistol might have saved us. Dr. Kang's knowledge is giving us leverage. We're alive because we're adapting to the situation, not because we followed some perfect plan. The captain's right. Park Ji-won added. I fired that gun without thinking, just reacting. It could have gone terribly wrong. But it didn't. We work with what we have, Suji. That's all any of us can do. On the 10th day, Commandant Thelvoros brought news. War Marshal Krevthul has made his move. He's taken control of the military fleet. He's declared that the human threat must be eliminated immediately. He's coming here to Velcros Prime to destroy your ship and all of you. Han Doyen felt his blood run cold. How long do we have? His fleet will arrive in 6 hours. I have only 3 ships loyal to the Council. It won't be enough to stop him. The humans looked at each other. After surviving first contact, after months of captivity, after finally gaining a position of strength, they were going to die. Unless they could find one more miracle, one more unexpected advantage. How many ships does Krevthul have? Han Doyen asked. 47 warships. Time became a precious resource measured in minutes. Han Doyen gathered his crew and explained his plan. It was desperate and relied entirely on deception, but it was all they had. Engineer Bae Hyun-woo was brought from his facility across the planet, reunited with the group at last. When he heard the plan, he smiled for the first time in months. It's crazy enough to work, Hyun-woo said. The industrial equipment at my facility has everything we need to build what you're describing. But we only have 6 hours. Then we better start now, Han Doyen replied. They were transported to the manufacturing center where Hyun-woo had been working. The facility was enormous, filled with machines that could shape metal and create complex components with thought-directed precision. Under Hyun-woo's guidance, the humans began building weapons that looked terrifying, but weren't quite what they seemed. Using mining equipment, they constructed crude railguns, devices that could launch metal projectiles using magnetic acceleration. They built simple explosive charges from industrial chemicals contained in metal casings that looked like military ordnance. They created what appeared to be missile launchers from structural materials and power cells. Everything was functional technically, but nothing was as powerful as it looked. Park Ji-won worked with a team to position these improvised weapons around the landing platform where the Eternal Horizon sat. They mounted the railguns on makeshift stands. They placed the explosive charges in strategic locations. They made everything as visible as possible, wanting the Velcrans to see exactly what they were facing. Dr. Kang Min-ho worked on the most important part of the plan. He created detailed technical documents describing human weapons technology, complete with specifications, diagrams, and tactical doctrine. But like everything else, the documents were designed to intimidate rather than inform. He listed weapons that humans had developed, from ancient catapults to modern missiles, and implied that all of them were available to the crew. He described military strategies that assumed the use of overwhelming kinetic force. Most importantly, he created the impression that this small group of humans was just the tip of a much larger threat. He suggested that weapons caches had been hidden throughout the Dominion during their 3 months in captivity. He implied that other human ships might already be in this region of space, drawn by the Eternal Horizon's distress signal. None of it was true, but the Velcrans had no way to verify any of it. 4 hours before the War Marshal's fleet was due to arrive, they were ready. The landing platform looked like a human military fortification. The improvised weapons bristled from every angle. The crew wore whatever they could find that looked like combat gear. They looked like a force ready for war, rather than 300 desperate colonists with one real gun between them. Han Doyen opened a communication channel to the incoming fleet. He knew Krevthul would be monitoring all transmissions to the planet. "This is Captain Han Doyen of the human ship Eternal Horizon. We know you're coming, War Marshal. We want you to know that we're ready for you." There was no response, which is what he expected. He continued anyway. "Dr. Kang, begin the demonstration." On the landing platform, with cameras broadcasting to every Velcron in the system, Park Ji-won fired the first railgun. The weapon was aimed at an abandoned structure a kilometer away. The projectile left the railgun with a flash of light and a sound like thunder. It struck the building and tore through it, the kinetic energy causing a section of the structure to collapse. The sound echoed across the landing field. Every Velcran on Velcros Prime would have heard it. More importantly, the fleet approaching the planet would have seen it on their sensors. Park Ji-won fired again, and again. Each shot was aimed at empty targets, causing dramatic destruction but harming no one. The other improvised weapons fired in sequence. Explosions bloomed in carefully controlled areas. The railguns hammered away at designated structures. It looked like a display of overwhelming firepower. Dr. Kang Minho narrated the entire demonstration, broadcasting on all frequencies. His voice was calm and professional, like a teacher giving a lecture. "This is a standard railgun, using magnetic acceleration to achieve velocities of 3 kilometers per second. Impact energy is sufficient to penetrate starship hulls. These are high explosive charges using human chemical compounds. Blast radius is approximately 50 meters with significant fragmentation effects." He paused between each description, letting the sounds of destruction punctuate his words. "Human military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming application of kinetic force. Defense is achieved through dispersion, mobility, and redundant systems. We have extensive experience fighting opponents with superior technology by using asymmetric warfare tactics." The demonstration continued for 30 minutes. By the end, the landing platform was surrounded by smoke and debris. The improvised weapons had performed better than expected, though several had broken from the stress. But the Velcrans watching didn't know that. They saw destruction on a scale their civilization hadn't witnessed in thousands of years. Krevthul's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right on schedule, appearing in orbit around Velcros Prime. 47 warships, each capable of destroying cities with their energy weapons. Against the human fortification on the ground, it should have been an easy victory. But the fleet hesitated. Han Doyun watched the orbital displays with Commandant Thelvoros. The Velcran warships had stopped just outside weapons range. They weren't advancing, weren't attacking. They were just sitting there, uncertain. "They're afraid," Thelvoros said, its surface showing a color that might have been hope. "They saw the demonstration. They don't know how to fight you." Han Doyen opened another communication channel, this time directed at the War Marshal's flagship. "War Marshal Krevthul, this is Captain Han Doyen. You've seen what we can do. You've seen human weapons in action. What you haven't seen is the full extent of our capabilities." He was gambling everything on the next words. "There are 300 humans on this planet. But we are not alone. Our ship sent a distress signal the moment we arrived in your territory 6 months ago. By now that signal has reached human space. By now a response fleet is being assembled. Do you really want to start a war with a species that has spent its entire history perfecting the art of killing?" There was a long silence. Then finally a response came. Krevthul's voice was transmitted through translation devices, appearing as text on the screens. "You are bluffing, human. You have no fleet. You are 300 survivors with primitive weapons." "Maybe," Han Doyen replied. "Are you willing to bet the future of the Dominion on that assumption? Because if you're wrong, if there are more humans coming, you'll have started a war that your civilization is completely unprepared to fight. You have ships that can destroy planets with energy weapons, yes, but we have weapons you can't defend against. We have a history of warfare you can't imagine. We have a willingness to accept casualties that would destroy your society. He could see the Velcran ships on the display, still motionless. I'm offering you a choice, War Marshal. You can attack us now and maybe you'll win. You'll kill 300 humans. But you'll prove to every species in your empire that the mighty Velcrans are afraid of us. You'll show weakness, or you can choose another path. Scholar Pelnara had been waiting for this moment. She broadcast her own message to the fleet, overriding military channels with the authority of the High Council. War Marshal Krevthul, this is Scholar Pelnara. I speak for a majority of the Council. We are offering a treaty to the humans. They will be given full autonomy, free passage, and diplomatic recognition. In exchange, they agreed to a mutual defense pact and promised not to share weapons technology with other species. This is surrender. Krevthul's response was immediate and angry. We do not surrender to primitives. This is survival, Pelnara replied. The humans have shown us that our assumptions about security were false. They have revealed weaknesses in our defenses we didn't know existed, but they are also offering peace. They don't want war any more than we do. Accept reality, War Marshal. The age of unchallenged Velcron dominance is over. But that doesn't mean we must be enemies. The minutes dragged by. On the landing platform, Park Ji-won kept the weapons trained on the sky, ready to fire again if needed. Lee Suji stood with Dr. Kang Minho, both of them silent and tense. The entire crew waited, knowing that at any moment energy weapons could rain down from orbit and end everything. Then slowly, one ship in Krevthul's fleet broke formation. Then another. Then 10 more. The War Marshal's commanders were refusing to follow him. The coup he had attempted was collapsing, undermined by the same fear he had hoped to use to justify his actions. Krevthul's flagship turned and accelerated away from the planet. The remaining loyal ships followed. Within minutes, the immediate threat was over. Han Doyen felt his knees go weak with relief. They had survived. Through a combination of actual capability, exaggerated claims, and pure bluffing, they had faced down an empire and won. Over the next week, the treaty was formalized. The humans were given the Eternal Horizon back, fully repaired and upgraded with Velcran navigation systems. They received star charts showing safe routes back to human space. Most importantly, they received recognition as equals.